The forklift's warning beep barely rose above the hum of the cargo bay, a polite sound in a room built for louder truths. A shrink-wrapped pallet eased forward like a heavy secret deciding whether to speak. The driver leaned on a clipboard that could have opened more doors than a crowbar ever would. The Waybill on top looked clean enough to eat off, numbers that lined up, a forwarder name that made everyone's shoulders drop, routing notes that said, in effect, relax. A Waybill is a piece of paper that tells a warehouse who a box belongs to and where it's going. If it looks right, people stop looking. The security gate light blinked green. Somewhere, a dispatcher waved the truck toward daylight. In 30 seconds the tailgate would shut, and nobody in the room would realize they just watched $20 million change shape. It started, and ended, at an airport that sits where highways not like impatient shoelaces, an airport where shifts overlap in a way that turns minutes into blind spots. I've worked those spots. They smell like rubber and coffee. The morning crew steps in with fresh mugs, the night crew steps out with the walk they learned in their first year not to change. That window, 10, maybe 20 minutes, belongs to anyone prepared to look ordinary. According to police, the pallet at the center of this story had flown in from a Swiss refinery and carried metal dense enough to bend your idea of weight, plus currency that preferred going from vault to vault without visiting the sun. The number attached to it would eventually be argued into several shapes, but it would always start with a 2 and more zeros than most people see on a pay stub. The driver wore the kind of vest that lets you turn invisible by reflecting light. He wasn't in a hurry. Hurrying is suspicious. He answered questions by nodding under the brim of a hat that could have been worn by any of 100 men who'd been waved through that same gate since dawn. If you're new to this world you might imagine a whispered password or a clever phrase at the checkpoint, you're thinking about movies. In real life, the magic trick is not a phrase but a document that aligns with a tired person's expectation. Arguing with a clean Waybill is like arguing with a calendar, you can try, but the room will decide you're the problem. Do you have the pickup reference or just the AWB? The clerk asked without looking up. AWB's on top, the driver said, tapping the corner. Carrier is late issuing the pickup, told me to roll anyway. Fine, the clerk said. If it's wrong, the forwarder will scream. They always do. Screaming is a kind of music in cargo. Most days no one wants to hear it. The forklift kissed the pallet's base and lifted with the exhale of a machine that knows its lines. The load settled into the truck like an extra paragraph at the end of a legal memo. The tailgate closed with a sound that wanted to be a period. It wasn't. The route looked like a commuter's thought. Ramp to highway. Merge under a sign that has told the same lie for 20 years, normal traffic ahead. Off at an exit a few miles out, the kind of inconvenient loop you take when you want to be forgettable. According to court filings, there was no chase, no dramatic radio call, no spike strips. That's daytime for you, it forgives everything that looks like it belongs. The first complication didn't arrive at a gate. It arrived on a headset. A dispatcher checked a queue and frowned the way a man frowns when his math suddenly has one too many zeros. Confirm pickup on the Zurich inbound? He asked the warehouse lead. Left 30 minutes ago, she said. Everything matched. The forwarder says the pickup is scheduled, now, he said, scrolling. Different carrier. Silence weighted the space between them. In logistics, silence is a math problem. Subtract what you saw from what you should have seen, if the remainder is a truck, you're in trouble. Security pulled camera clips and saw what you'd expect to see on any Tuesday: vest, clipboard, forklift, a truck leaving at a pace the law would clap for. No masks, no threats, no broken locks. Just a number the system recognized in a room that needed the line to keep moving. Run me the bay logs for that hour, the ops manager said, voice tight around a printout. And call the airline's cargo liaison. Don't use email. What do we tell them? The security lead asked. Tell them our process worked, the manager said, then paused. Then tell them it didn't. If you want to know how cases like this get built, picture a map made of thin threads. License plate readers blink on toll roads, cameras at intersections do their slow, impolite winks, parking lots keep their own scribbled diaries. According to police, the truck's path surfaced where all such paths do, in places where no one expects to be part of a story. A lot attendant remembered the engine note and smiled because some sounds put a hand on a man's shoulder. A highway camera caught the tailgate and the habit of a driver who stayed to the right because the right lane pretends it has nothing to do with drama. The trail went quiet for a while. Trails often do. Then money made a noise. "What's the flag?" a bank analyst asked, watching a pattern that had worked until it didn't. "Deposits trying too hard to be boring," her colleague said. "Same branches, similar amounts, weekday apathy." She filed the escalation anyway. Smart criminals underestimate boredom, they forget how many people are paid to look at it with hungry eyes. The call threaded through the kind of phone tree that lawyers like to tangle on purpose and landed on a desk with enough jurisdiction to matter. Around that time, according to police, warrants turned paper into doors. Officers collected devices from kitchens and bedrooms, lists written in impatient hands, bracelets that weighed more than their stories said they should. A trash can held a scrap of shrink wrap that had an airline code like a ghost of a barcode. None of it sang, together it hummed. "What about the value?" a reporter asked at a press conference later. "Is it 20 million or 22.5? Valuation is the subject of ongoing litigation," the spokesperson said. "Different parties assess it differently. You might roll your eyes, but that's the part nobody tells you in documentaries, the number is a battlefield. Shippers speak softly in public and loudly in claims. Carriers measure with rulers the size of the Montreal Convention. Insurers cultivate skepticism like a herb garden. Each is right, in a way that would infuriate a philosopher and delight a judge. The number matters because it decides who pays for the silence between a nod and a gate lifting." The investigation pulled on a thread that ran through a jewelry store where, according to police, somebody had equipment that turns dense metal into different shapes without asking too many questions. "I'm not going to show you how, that's not what this is. Just know that gold likes to forget who it used to be. Melt a bar, shave a mark, marry it to cousins, and it walks into the world with clean shoes." According to police briefings, small items recovered looked like the aftermath of a haircut, the floor was clean, but the mirror new. "Would a refinery notice?" a junior detective asked a colleague in a hallway where bad coffee was the only neutral party. "Depends who's asking," the older one said. "Depends how much. Depends on a dozen things that don't fit on a form." Meanwhile, the labor of logistics kept happening. Planes arrived. Pallets kissed metal and rolled into rooms. Clerks scanned barcodes the way a priest touches beads. Day after day, trust and speed held hands like a couple who have decided to stop arguing about what to watch tonight. In that rhythm, insiders, if insiders there were, could set a tempo without raising their hands. According to police and prosecutors, some of the people charged had jobs that put them close to the numbers, some had jobs that put them close to the doors. "Could we have stopped it?" a trainee asked me months later as we walked a different dock. He had that earnest look that makes older men want to lie, and better men want to tell the truth. "Sure," I said. "At any of 100 tiny places. But none of those places looked on fire when you were standing there." "How do you know which smoke matters?" he asked. "The smoke that looks like fog," I said. "The kind people are comfortable walking through." Charges arrived like weather. Not all at once, not everywhere. People pleaded not guilty, as they do. Defense lawyers said the paperwork meant less than the cops said. Prosecutors said the paperwork meant more than the defense wanted. According to news reports, only a sliver of the metal ever walked back into daylight with a badge beside it. That's another thing documentaries forget, recovery is a smaller word than loss. It usually is. Far away from courtrooms, the badge office at the cargo facility grew a line that looked like a snake that had eaten a clipboard. Two-factor checks went from suggestion to ritual. Double verification stopped being an insult and started being the cost of breathing. The new rule was a paragraph stapled to the old rule, and nobody admitted either paragraph existed because productivity hates paragraphs. The loader who told himself yesterday that the forwarder would scream if something was wrong told himself today that the manager would scream if he didn't stop to call. That's progress, for a given value of progress. Double verify AWBs for high value, a supervisor told her team. If you can't verify, you call. I don't care what time it is. Even for the regulars, someone asked. Especially for the regulars, she said. Familiarity is the kindest mask complacency wears. The number kept orbiting, a moon pretending to be a calendar. Was it gold and cash worth 20-ish million? Was it a hair more? Was it a hair less? The answer mattered for reasons bigger than headlines. Insurers sign checks based on numbers and adjectives. Carriers live or die by definitions of liability that were written in a century that liked fountain pens more than forklifts. Shippers tally reputations as carefully as losses. According to legal filings summarized in public, the suits filed over responsibility read like cousins of the same letter written in slightly different fonts. There was talk of a man who used to walk the facility like he owned gravity and later walked into a different country at the precise moment his phone learned how to be quiet. There was talk of a driver who, according to U.S. agents, had his hands in more than one jar. Talk is a fast traveler. I learned a long time ago to separate the sound of rumor from the sound of evidence. They rhyme just enough to get you in trouble. What did not feel like talk were the small habits that changed after. Guard shack started asking for a second number instead of just the first. Desks kept a laminated card with 3 questions that would have sounded like harassment last year and sounded like insurance this year. A handler I know began writing a note on the back of the waybill he checked, date, time, initials, and the word looked. He said it reminded him that he'd chosen to see, not just to scan. It buys me 10 seconds, he told me. 10 seconds is a long time when something's wrong. I keep thinking about the worker who lifted the pallet that morning. He'll be a villain to some people and a victim to others. He'll be a punchline to the men at bars who measure courage in hindsight. He was a worker in a room built to call everything normal until it hurts. If you've never stood next to a line that can't stop, don't audit the man who wanted to make it to lunch without a new problem. Audit the system that asked him to choose speed and then punished him for choosing it. There's a temptation in stories like this to end with clarity. That's not how life pays out. What you get instead is partial recovery, partial memory, partial justice, and a handful of lessons that fit in a pocket and weigh more than they look. Lesson 1 is simple: paperwork is a key. Treat it like a key. Lesson 2 is hard: routine is a lullaby. Wake up when the song gets too familiar. Lesson 3 is human: reward the clerk who says, wait, instead of the one who keeps the line pretty. You won't trend for it. You will sleep better. A year and a half later, people still ask if the thieves were brilliant. They were competent. They were patient. They bet correctly that a system designed to move good things quickly will occasionally move a bad thing efficiently if you ask nicely enough. That's not genius. That's our failure. We built a world where a clean number on a clean page can lower a gate faster than caution can raise a hand. We can build a different one. It will cost time and it will save value. It will annoy people at first. They'll survive. I don't have a sermon. I have a memory of a Tuesday morning from years before this case when a driver handed me a sheet with a number I recognized for the wrong reason, a smudge where a digit should have been clean. I asked him to wait. He sighed. The line moaned like an old door. My boss made the face bosses make when revenue stands still. 2 minutes later the forwarder called and said, hold that pallet. Something's off. No parade waited for me outside. No bonus arrived in an envelope. Just a small, ordinary sense that boredom had tried to talk me into a mistake and I'd asked it to repeat the question until it became obvious. If you've listened this far, you know somebody who moves boxes for a living, or data that tells boxes where to go. Ask them where their fog lives. Ask them which 5 minutes they wish they could buy every day. Then, if you're the kind of person who writes comments beneath videos, tell me about the time you said, wait, and nobody thanked you until later. Those are the stories that move the gate a little higher, and make the green light blink only when it should.